Good evening, friends. How are you? Dobry večer. Dobry din, if it's afternoon for you in America right now. I think it's beginning to be towards the evening for you. Hope you're doing well. I just got through getting two articles out. One that was didn't require a lot of work. The CNN is pumping lies. That's pretty easy when I didn't have to work deep dive on it. And then, of course, I like to do my updates of how things are going related to the Sun Tzu's Art of War as it is compared to the idiots who decided going full scale war was a good idea, because it's not. That's what Sun Tzu explicitly taught, was that the state's resources, meaning people, are invaluable, and therefore you really don't want to go do shit like that. But they did, right? So anyway, we'll let our friends kind of settle in for a little bit. I'm not going to stay on really long. I don't really have this week. We're actually going. Sean is going to be traveling at the end of the week on Friday, so we're talking. We talked today a little bit about doing the Sean Penner, the Voices from the Front and Wiretap reserved for this weekend, and we'll see what's going on with that. Hold on, get these browsers. I have my side screen and my laptop screen here. So I'm trying to get these things in order a little bit, so I don't have to mess around with them while we're talking. Bear with me, and let everyone settle in. And I have a couple of other articles that are going on in the background, one of which is going to be a little bit longer article related to the video I've got together for you guys today. I hope you were able to go watch. If not, when we're done, you can go watch it. It's footage from yesterday's Easter events at St. Sophia. And mainly, I put all the video, the uncut version of the video is being transcribed, so I'm letting the system kind of finish that so I can finish my write-up, because I have a very detailed write-up about the history of Easter and a lot of the things that were happening in the video. People are always saying, I want to see, I want to know more about what they're saying. I want to know, what are the lyrics of a song? Where do these things come from? For me, while I pop my, some people don't like that, but I have hands that need relief. I'm sorry for popping my knuckles right here on camera with you guys. I'm terrible. I'm a savage. So I'm transcribed a whole lot of the information so that I can kind of go through it, and I'll get to what happened in Dnipro. And yes, he was on with Greg Terry earlier. 5 people were killed today, dozens injured in a double ballistic attack, and also some attacks that happened in Odessa. There were cab attacks tonight, and in Kharkiv. So that's one of the things that's kind of in my. That's why I took the time to do an update again on the Trump and Putin art of war comparatives, so that we could have that. And can I post my Substack of my favorite song? Asks Joe. I guess, sure. Also, if you want to send it to me or anything like that, let me know. Um, my first and foremost skill is in music. Um, Basically ethnomusicology, I guess you could think of in that capacity. So I study a lot about cultural music around the world, and here is a nonstop, very, very busy part of life. I was very glad to see not only the choirs that were singing in order to facilitate for the people to come out and dance yesterday in the fields of St. Sophia, but also the traditional small ensemble that was playing around the back end of the church, which I didn't see until I kept. After I decided to end the live stream portion, knowing that I was still filming more that you would see today with the release of the video I put out today, I get around the back end of the building, and there were, even more musicians and dancing to be done. And it was, hey, War Doggo's here. Big respect. Hey, War Doggo. Dobry večer, brate. So, but I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to wait to publish the long form article version that will go with the video I put out today is that there's a lot of symbolism in holding Easter in Ukraine right now, in my opinion. And that is that because the story that makes Easter so important is the resurrection, and that you have also the fact that it's in spring. You know, we have people who have been isolated in winter for months with terrible devastation of war, on top of blackouts, on top of death in buildings here in Kyiv and elsewhere, from the winter. And spring represents that revitalization. But also, the most important part is Christianity and these churches were here when Moscow was a fucking swamp. Okay? If you consider that Christianity arrived in here, in Ukraine, even before the first cathedrals were built, before Vladimir the Wise, that it was it was rooted here, and this is one of the things that Russia really, really wishes it could have, you know. And I think it is really incumbent upon Americans, especially, if you have a problem with your country spreading the misinformation about Christianity in Ukraine. Let me know where you're at. Maybe you're in Ireland, where there's a bunch of people who seem to randomly just hate Ukraine for no fucking reason. Actually, the Irish should never be. That there are certain categories, like I'm Scottish nationalist inside, and there's certain categories that, like, why would you be in this? Other than disinformation, why would you be in this mindset? You know what colonialism's like. You know what it's like to have your language subdued. You can't speak Gaelic in Scots and get away with it. So therefore, it seems like a natural bond. In fact, a lot of reason why I think I naturally sort of understand Ukrainians and understand the situation here, and say, чому я розумію це наші ситуації і наша історія. The fact that the reason why I get it is because it's very similar to what happened in Ireland and Scotland. Now, it's worse here, to be honest with you. I think the only other comparative is chattel slavery in America. And some people say there's no comparative. Oh, no, 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 no. I have a whole segment I'm working on. And someone actually kind of beat me to it the other day in a different way. I have to avoid reading their article. I saved it for later so I don't taint my research. But essentially, I'm showing that Russia has been using a slave state mentality and slave state enforcement for a long fucking time. I mean, like, for a long fucking time. Okay. So they're different, yes, in that America had slaves, stolen from Africa, hijacked from China and other areas. I mean, but specifically chattel slavery with Africans is the biggest, most notable version. And so they're not comparative in that aspect, yes. But anyone who does not realize that you don't just wake up in Siberia because, well, I think I can find some land over there. No, you were fucking sent there. You were sent there, and also the forced labor was part of what drove the Russian engine. So these things are important. And again, that article will come later. But the article I will put out tomorrow will be about Easter's sacred traditions here. And I hope you enjoyed the video I put together and yesterday. I didn't actually expect to get that video. And honestly, partially my fault. I have so many things going on at once. I didn't check all the notices I get as a journalist here. There's great teams at the media center and other circles that keep me very well informed on events that are coming and going. And I have some topics I pay attention to more because I, have certain priorities here for our safety and for things like return defenders or weapons development and war situations. So if you say, there's a great tourniquet workshop tomorrow, I've told you before, if you get struck near me, you're going to die. I do not know medical. I don't fuck around on that. If your car has a problem, take it to a mechanic. I'm not your guy. So, and I use these as metaphors, remember. I always tell you this. I try to reveal the playbook for you. I use these things to tell you, don't bullshit your lane. Okay? I am not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. But I have my specialty, and you can kind of tell by what I write. My articles are in certain lanes, right? They're in security field, they're in Russian influence operation fields. Oh, I have a really good one about Slovenia coming tomorrow. Oh, we got another Kremlin bitch. I just have to do. I have to do a better job than where I had it landed by about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I needed to stop because I had to get to some other works. But I have a really good one on Slovenia. So we're not done yet. Just because Viktor Orban fucking lost doesn't mean it's over. Also, congratulations and thank you to Peter Magyar for saying he would not block aid for Ukraine, the financial aid, but it still looks like Robert Fico will, and it looks like with Slovenia, they want to actually remove themselves from NATO because I was a criminal bitch, the new prime minister. So, again, that article will, I think, should be able to be done by tomorrow. I just want to get more of it done. I want to get really into the gears. There's some very interesting components in that story. And but like I said, a lot of my articles are in relatively a lane I've been in for several years now, nearly a decade in some cases, more than a decade in other cases. And I think you'll really, really appreciate that. And then one that I put out earlier the evening that I don't have to really work as hard on this. CNN bringing on a guy that, I really despise that they do this both sidesism, but it's not really both sidesism, when you bring on a manipulative, lying piece of shit on one side, and then you sit them against someone else who also is, yes, a Democratic Party operative, or maybe even a sitting representative or something, like Rohana was on there, and then they get this guy on today, and I when I'm kind of getting up and around. Hold on, let me see if I can pull my article up on the side. I told you I often forget my own titles because I'm usually in the gist of the story. But the lie machine next to the anchor. And this guy, Hal Lambert, the first thing that stood out was this bad mullet type of thing he had. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's not the mullet, but it's pretty weird. And I went, who is this guy? I turned the audio up, and you can almost easily predict what he's going to say. He's there with someone who's genuinely trying to discuss the sanity and or insanity of the syphilitic felon president and his team. And they don't really need Scott Jennings on there because they can pull on, like Noah Rothman or this guy. And I went, where have I seen this guy before? What am I going to find when I turn the rock over and look up under to see where the worms and the maggots and all the stuff that will be there? Oh, yes, of course. He's going to be a hedge fund, not even just a hedge fund type of guy. He's specifically going to be one who involves himself in financial crypto simply to raise money for the Republican Party. Like not even really a businessman. That's not a businessman. That's just basically a manipulative con artist. I mean a human cross from Spawn of Evil? Yeah, sort of like that. But they've been doing this, and I had a great conversation with one of my awesome friends. Basically, my one of my biggest support sides. And I don't mean in the supporters who, which I'm going to talk about, our wonderful supporters on this platform in a minute, but just one of those people that really puts up with my insanity. And we were talking about the story that's come out with Eric Swalwell, and I said that because of the way the initial news had broken, that there was certain wording in the article as it was breaking that led me to believe it had at least gone to the legal standards team, and therefore was not going to be good news. And this was within hours of it breaking. So, and that person rightfully pushed back, but CNN, like, come on, differently compromised than the overt Fox News, but seriously. And I said, well, no, they do have a different kind of infrastructure in the background about legal standards and such that even though they have the talking chatter class, especially there's a crossover night, much like you see on MSNBC, where you get roughly kind of a relay of news during the day, then you get into more of the longer discussion and or opinion pieces at night, or even during the breaks of shows. And for those who don't know, I have a digital archive. I haven't been doing it since I lived here because I don't waste money on the types of tools like Hulu that I did in the first year. Actually, I kept recording news well into summer 2022, but what I would do is I have a Hauppauge recorder here. I can now use OBS to do the same thing where I would record Situation Room, AC360, Aaron Burnett, all these shows, like I have been doing digitally since 2007, and physically, mechanically on a VHS from 2001 but forward. And I have a massive digital archive that is, aside from industries, or there are actually certain um, harvesting companies, I guess is how I try to think of, news aggregator companies that literally that's what their job is. They record all that, and then third party journalists, etc., can lease those clips, etc. And before I came here, I was recording news every day, all day long, and specifically nearly from noon until midnight, every single day on CNN, MSNBC, a big chunk of Fox, not all of Fox, because most of it's junk, but certain segments because I knew I would get what I needed. Frontline, 60 Minutes. I have hundreds of episodes of 60 Minutes, hundreds of episodes of Frontline, etc., etc., etc. And this is why I have nearly an encyclopedic knowledge of who the anchors have been, the topics they've covered, and I used to really, no one would win with me if someone said, well, they never cover what? Yeah, hold on. Because what I do when I get those hour-long clips, let's just use Situation Room on CNN as an example. You have A block, B block, C block, etc., all the way to the top of the hour, and then you have 2 hours of the show, and same thing is true of the other shows. But you're going to get maybe 15 minutes of A block, maybe 10 minutes of B block, and I could measure really how much time was put into global climate change, women's rights, children's poverty, any number of topics. But my specialty topics like terrorism, Russian operations, etc., those would get harvested in their own folders, and that's why I have like some of these files here. These hard drives, they're filled with data. In fact, some of these have 2000 or 2021 news footage. I have all the footage from the withdrawal of Afghanistan on multiple networks sitting here right here on my desk right now. And they're in raw form. They're straight from the Hauppauge recorder on there, and I have not had the time to cut them. So it's like every Rachel Maddow show, every, what do you call it? Brian Williams, all those guys on MSNBC, all the Situation Room, all of Aaron Burnett. And then what I do is I clip them, and I want to watch over time how they evolve. And I did this originally in 2003, even more so. I started in 2001, specifically doing this after 9/11. And I had been recording television segments, so I have like tons of politically incorrect from the 90s, all sorts of stuff like that. But when I was mostly into kind of, just a little bit of everything, just had a really good, video library. I have 2,500 VHS tapes still in storage. Many of them have been digitized, but not all of them. I may just donate them one day to some library that wants to do something with them. But in 2003, when we were starting the war in Iraq, I wanted to know who these guys were that were being brought up on MSNBC, Fox, CNN, ABC News, to tell us why we were supposed to think something. And this had a lot to do with how the Gulf War coverage had been, and that some commentators that I appreciated had kind of woken me up to how news framed things for us. Even if they mean well, okay. Let's just assume we can start on the up and up. We don't have to go to just Fox. But then 2003 came, right? The war in Iraq, and part of why I got good at KPFT in the news department, when I had no desire per se to be a journalist or any of that stuff, was that I had a studio, and I could cut audio and video of anything that was happening at any time on short notice. And since I was only 2 blocks from the radio station, they would call during the day and say, did you get Condi Rice's comments? Did you get Donald Rumsfeld's comments? Dick Cheney's comments? Whatever it was. And sure, no problem. And I would wire it over. And then it kept happening. People who were in my life, they knew that we're about to go down to Target and buy a big stack of videotapes again and again and again and again, because I would buy these big 6-hour and 8-hour videotapes. and record and record and record. Like, I had no idea eventually there would be a C-SPAN digital library. I didn't know that. I wish I had known that. But even now, I don't care because I don't want them to have the library. I need to have the library. Independently, I need to be able to go through my library of exactly what was covered, independently archived from those libraries, independently stored, assessed, analyzed, and quantified even, right? And so that's kind of how I got my skill set is, whatever my retina memory, as I call it, brings up is deeply, deeply impressed upon way too many hours of news coverage. Also, although I was on television eventually, for many years I was behind the scenes where my job would be, like in the case of terrorism, we have had a vehicle pedestrian attack July 14th, 2014, 2015. Yeah, forgive me, the Bastille Day attack in Nice, France. And the person I worked with was going to the station and needed to know exactly how many had happened in Israel and Palestine because there's going to be a discussion on low cost impact, high impact, and high casualty weapon systems. Essentially you could take and weaponize something that you can get anywhere. And so I had, that behind the scenes job as well, where, I had to know data fairly quickly, help news people understand ISIS, understand Russian hackers, understand disinformation. Not so much how disinformation was being talked about because there were certain people who were already doing that, but because I was down in the gears, could I, assess and explain to someone how, the process was working, which is eventually how I wound up on television. And reluctantly speaking, I can tell you can go to my personal website, chrishampstead.com, and there's a TV section with me reluctantly appearing on television. I'm not much into TV. Even this is a little unusual. Still, I like you guys. That's why I do it. I really appreciate you. But like last night, I went to jump in with David Brookfield over at Letters from Ukraine. Unfortunately, the space was not functioning physically. I kind of prefer radio, where we can just put the headphones on, listen to each other, talk to each other, and have a conversation kind of in between the ears. I think we do better. Like right now, I have to. I'm actually literally looking at a screen of myself to read your comments. That is not cool. It's really weird. I prefer we had, like last night, Steve Hassan was on so I could see Steve Hassan's face. And even then, I can't see Steve Hassan's face because the way the screen is, I see Steve Hassan's face at the bottom, but the camera button is at the top. So I have to look at the top while his face is at the bottom to see what your quotes are, which I read down here. All of it's a little abnormal. And that's exactly what it's like when you're in a studio. When you basically show up in your shirt and tie and you have to say, well, yeah, thank you for having me join today. We have a mass shooting, as you know, here, and what we do know now is currently investigators are trying to understand, the motivations of the shooter. And I'm staring at a little phone in my library for 5 minutes to try to talk to someone that I can't see. I don't even half the time know what the anchors look like until the segment is sent to me later, and I finally figure out who I'm talking to, what they look like. I don't know what they look like. There isn't a reverse screen. It's not like Zoom, etc. It's a little bitty dot at the top of a phone. Or as I will wire up later in this week, I need to put my camera back in place here so I can get to my broadcast level like I was doing on my Culture Saturdays. Because like tonight, if I had that wired right now, we would be talking a little bit. Then I would play the Easter coverage and then I'd come back and talk some more. But I didn't wire any of that up because I've been traveling around a little bit. And so I'll get back to wiring that up because I have a lot of footage to share with you and some more concert footage that I will share with you. But that's a lot of how news works when you see the guys come in remotely on the different TV segments that you watch when they're experts at home, especially during COVID. There were a lot of people who turned into home studios, and that's actually interesting that all these people suddenly own guitars. Like, you ever notice this? You watch all of them; they have a guitar, like an acoustic guitar, hanging on a wall somewhere. Everyone over goes like, "What's up with the guitars?" Like, how well do you play that thing, that's behind you on the side wall or whatever else? Remember COVID days when every expert you were used to seeing in the studio was suddenly at home, and it was always an acoustic guitar hanging on a wall with a little guitar hook. Mine sits on a stand. I have two of them. The other one's, I don't know where it's at. It's around here. Oh, it's on the other side over there. But it's a surreal thing, doing media news in that capacity. And now I think a lot of the guys are used to doing it, and it's kind of interesting to see that now we have Substack. You can see a lot of folks in their homes, in their offices. They got their books set up. I mean, Steve Hassan was on with us last night. He had his green screen up because we didn't have a media library with us. And I'm such a jerk. I didn't go like, hey, Steve, send me the background and I will superimpose it because I can do green screen. I've been doing chroma key for 20 years at least. Actually, exactly 20 years because it was in 2006 I first did chroma key. I have to wonder too if they can play. Yes. You would see a banjo behind someone. I actually play banjo. Banjo was my second instrument behind guitar. Not great at it though. When I play banjo, it sounds very different. I was in a Dixieland band in college, no less. Speaking of banjo, someone just mentioned banjo in our chat space here. You have to say to yourself, there's no way that dweeb can play banjo. I loved bluegrass as a kid, so side note there. Now, back to CNN. I pointed out to my friend when we were talking about CNN's current shift to MAGA land for a while now, in fact, being very corporate-minded, that it's not really new. I'm a big fan of Frank Zappa, and Frank Zappa tore into Robert Novak. And specifically, you remember that Tucker Carlson and these guys would get on there, but not just Crossfire. Crossfire wasn't stuck to just Crossfire. It was a problem throughout the entire history of it. And I don't mind that there are people on who have to represent or at least explain some bullshit that comes out of that wing. It's that, as you know, I've talked about this before, I really resent when they were covering the Benghazi attack, and that was a case I was directly working on, so I know a lot of the facts about that case in real-time coverage, plus on-the-ground information that I was able to get because of what I was doing. And all of a sudden they had Mark Lamont Hill versus Ben Ferguson, and I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate taking very serious topics and breaking it down to Tweedle right and Tweedle left. It's not good for the viewers. It's not good for understanding. I have a very specific remedy for that. It's my zombie van remedy. You basically take everyone that you need to protect all the other, humans, and you open the zombie van and you throw all those motherfuckers right at the zombies. First are the tech bros, the people who fuck up Lightroom and all my programs and can't stop messing them up. People who can't, take something and fix it and make it work. They keep trying to modify it and make it cooler, and they make it worse, and it bogs down and it doesn't work. That's van one. Death to the tech bros. Then comes these empty, and they always look, is it me, or do all these Republicans who go into those roles look almost exactly the same? They just look the same. There's something about the way that they sit down and they start speaking that the moment they sit down and they turn the camera to the guy, I already know nearly everything that's going to come out of his or her mouth just by appearance. Like there's been this theory that's running around about how Republican women are taking on this certain kind of facial surgery that they all start looking the same. Injected cheekbones, and I don't, I'm not into body shaming. I think that we come in different shapes and sizes, but when we start modifying it, and we start modifying it in the same direction, not hip to that. It looks weird. It's really gross. And they disappear. There's all these before and after pictures of some of these people, so it's really, really crazy. And someone just mentioned Swalwell here in a second. So I'm not going to get into that case exactly, except for one aspect of it. There's a felon rapist, pedophile in the White House. His Secretary of War is accused of rape. There are a whole bunch of people at Fox News who have engaged in sexual assault and rape. And Fox News didn't give a fuck about it. But boy, they couldn't wait to hold a press conference today about Eric Swalwell, right? And they like to play the whataboutism very quickly, you know. The Democratic Party has been really, really ridiculously good about getting rid of any of its known predators. It even get rid of some that were not even predators. Al Franken is not a fucking predator. Al Franken is a comedian who had a photo, and I'm a photo expert. I'm also a forensic expert with photos. I actually have mechanical tools that you can use to detect everything from doctoring to all sorts of shit. You know, I'm a light photons to film expert. That's my first and foremost probably skill besides playing music is I know how to use cameras. I know how they operate. I know the history of the camera. I know everything from sensors and lenses and all sorts of shit down to how you can even fool with a lot of good skill. You can fool a lot of those detectors. You can't fool all of them. You have to kind of know. That's why you use more than one to detect doctoring. But Al Franken was a few feet away from someone when he did this over her chest, and it was very inappropriate. And they got rid of him. They didn't hesitate to get rid of him. And he didn't fight it either. He didn't rape anybody. He didn't sexually assault anybody. He didn't touch anybody. He didn't do any of those things. He did something that was inappropriate and paid the price. And the party was, in fact, it frustrates people. The reason why the conversation was on that topic the other night was an anger that the way in which Democrats fold on their own so quickly doesn't match the low-level, mongrel, monster, savage pieces of garbage of the Republican Party. And there's a rapist in the White House. He is responsible for $83 million and $5 million in damages to E. Jean Carroll, $88 million in settlements or penalties. A judge and jury approved, no less. And the 83 million is on appeal, but whatever, it's still there. And the selective outrage can basically go fuck itself. They don't care about victims. Melania Trump basically threw the victims of Epstein out in front of the bus the other day. Robotic fucking bitch that she is. And that story is also getting more and more interesting if you haven't been paying attention. In fact, there was an FBI report from 2019 that was made public today that shows she's fucking lying. But where's the outrage? They don't care about victims. They never have. The clan that is Trumpism hates rape victims. They have historically, in my entire life, always blamed the woman. It is culturally wired into their entire mentality to blame women for every fucking thing that happens to them. You know this. If a man raped a woman in my youth, well, I know he's bad, but why did you have to dress like that? He said to the nun, or whoever the fuck it was. Women were always shamed. It's part of the culture. They are at their root misogynists. Period. Full fucking stop. But the outrage continues. And one of the things I don't like about CNN and certain media that I don't have any need to play around with is false equivalence, number one, and some sort of false impartiality. I am not impartial about Ukraine as an example. I'll use an easy pivot away from that specific type of topic to here. I am unequivocally in the corner of Ukraine. Absolutely. Will I lie for Ukraine, about Ukraine, to benefit Ukraine? The only thing I would not tell you, and I don't have to lie about things, I can't think of a way I would frame it. There is what's called the good lie. Yes, there are no Jews below my house, that type of good lie. Um, Here's one. A few years ago, so we're in 2016. I want to say this was about August. No, actually, now I do know when it was. Anyway, late 2023, when people were talking about Bradleys and Abrams and why Biden didn't do this or did do that, etc. I had actually been at a place a little bit east of here and saw a batch of Bradleys go by, and was like, yeah, yeah. And then I was on a Twitter Space within probably later that night, maybe, or the next day. At least the next day. It wasn't long. And I just went, I hadn't seen much of anything. That's called operational security. Eventually, it also was how I was able to, when I heard people lying about how things were operating here, I knew that they were telling lies. It's why I know that I will, like when when you've been watching me live and we have an attack, and for instance, right now I need to pull up the map because we are past the ceasefire, which is also mentioned in my article tonight. I knew that there are some things, and remember, one of my other articles is Two Men, Two Wars in One Book, which is Putin and Trump and the Art of War, and the fact that they're both fucking losing. But right now, for instance, mostly the battling is still in the east. It's lit up in the northern part of Chernihiv, the northeast part of Sumy, big chunks around Dnipropetrovsk, and Nikopol is always on fire. And the rest are in occupied territory. It's been quiet, kind of quiet tonight. We had air raids today, and we had attacks in the city. But when we have some of these things happening, and you know that I've been on the air, I'm not going to point my camera so that you know how air defense works. In fact, sometimes when I was doing Twitter Spaces, I would toggle the audio if I knew what I was hearing, like in air defense, could be sussed out enough because I understand how that works. When I was doing counterterrorism work and studies, and I would go through ISIS materials in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, even though I hadn't been to those countries, never been to those countries, in case you don't know. I've had people say that I have. I don't know why. I've never told them that I have, but people mistakenly says, well, Chris, you've been there. I never said that. No, haven't been to those places. But I still could use the materials in the coverage to learn and tell you things and make notes. And it was one of the things I did all the time, was make notes about everything from gear I saw on video, Baofeng, CBs, whatever, or not CBs, but what do you call it, walkie-talkies. And I did all sorts of stuff with the videos, not just watch beheadings or watch terrible things. I would break apart so many things that I know that there are people who are really highly trained in the military and intelligence agencies who do that at a level you and I cannot imagine unless you've actually had that training. So those of us who cover war, we have to fog a little bit to protect those assets. But that's very different than the lies I'm talking about that are overt lies in the case of political theater on CNN, Fox, even MSNBC, where you see things and you are being lied to by someone who has every interest in gaslighting you. So I'm going to continue as long as I can, as long as there's breath in my body, to try my best to pull the curtains back on those processes that we see in our work here in news and journalism, because I think that my friends have made it very clear that they appreciate this, that that's one of the things that they want, and it's I think it's fascinating. I know that, like when I would go to music workshops with high-end masters, that's exactly what I want. I want you to tell me, how can I do that thing you're doing, or at least how can I appreciate it, even if I'm not going to be the one who does it. And so similarly, I've had pretty good feedback from you guys that the more I kind of pull back whatever I see, one that mentioned the other day that I got a message from someone says I was on with Egberto Willis. that I said that I saw Kyle Kalinske meet with Charlie Kirk. So I met Charlie Kirk. I didn't handshake the guy because he's a piece of shit. In case you didn't know. But I watched how they interacted with each other. So as I get up and do a debate, I'm not saying you can't be polite before a debate, but not that. Not what I saw. I was really grossed out at how the two of them interacted while they were about to go up and pull this debate at Politicon back in a few years ago. And I find it gross. I find it disingenuous. I don't. If you haven't noticed, I have an attitude problem. It's kind of known. I don't hide it. This is like, for instance, my shirt. Russian military ship, go fuck yourself. You know, I walk around with my attitude problem in full range, no less. People know. Vin duże boże. He's very crazy. But I don't like being bullshitted. I don't like, if I don't like someone, I'm probably just gonna ignore it. I'm gonna move on. And I've pointed out to people, there's a lot of battles behind the scenes you don't know about. Things that I know about people that I don't have the time to talk about. They're not for me to really get into. I know people who've come here from the West to play fuck around games here in Ukraine that you read about them, you figure it out, you hear about it, but not because I'm headlining it, even though I know about it. Or if I knew about situations here that were, especially with Ukrainians, I never shit talk a Ukrainian. Even if I hear a controversy, I leave it to Ukrainians to hash that out. I trust Ukrainians to figure that out amongst community and handle it like Ukrainians. And I don't need a Westerner like Megan Mobs. See, there's someone I don't mind skewering. I don't need a Westerner like Megan Mobs to kind of come out and be like the matron of the country and try to tell people how to do things. I don't need that shit. Don't believe in it. Fucking despise it, in fact. Find it gross. But that being said, part of the reason why I don't do it with a lot of controversies that I do here is, again, I think that I need to place the stories that are in front of us as the highest priority, which is removing people from captivity, bringing them home, bringing home the children from captivity, from being washed out into the Russian Empire, saving people in occupied territory from the devastation, bringing in weapons to stop the terrorists, etc. That's my top priority, not some jackass who runs up and down the street as a selfie artist who gets caught in a lie and it's going to be a problem. It's like, that's really beneath where I'm at. Or there's been some stories that have happened here, like a Brazilian volunteer who, he wasn't really a volunteer, he was in the services, who was killed. I know people around that story, but not really. I don't know the story well enough to tell you it as a journalist, to be honest with you. I don't. I know people around it enough that eventually I will learn the truth like you do, and it will be covered, and it will be covered by people who've done a good job. Kyiv Independent, for instance, did a story on that. There are other things that have happened here in 4 years that when I do hear the details, or if I get to learn the details, then I try to, like a good journalist should, like, what is the foundational story? What is it that the public needs to understand in order to be useful? And what's my role in it? And I think that's part of what we do. So anyway, enough of the rambles on that. Thank you for paying attention to those things with me. One real big reason why I want to go public tonight and do a video is, first off, we're going to move Sean's segment from Friday, this upcoming Friday, to maybe into the weekend. I talked to him earlier because he'll be traveling, so it's just not going to easily work. We may do it over the weekend. If not, don't worry. And a lot of my friends are in the middle of stuff, so kind of scheduling in some of these live videos has been a little difficult. They're absolutely interested in doing it. It's just a matter of, like, our timing is really kind of so just pay attention, and I will try to keep you announced. And I think a lot of the viewing that's happening here is very almost impulsive. I get announcements all the time from, Michael Fanone. In fact, I see on my timeline right now, Michael Fanone and certain people who are doing events that I didn't have that announcement 48 hours ago, and it'll be on in a few hours or something. Or Glenn Kirshner or someone, they don't really necessarily have a week ahead schedule. So, I kind of like really planning them out, and I have a good batch of folks that I can't wait until we can get them on here. But it's just a little bit of a timing. Also, there's still people who are not quite using Substack yet. They're not even quite aware of what it can do for them, and I think in time we will see that. But, however, and this is the point, we are at 955 total subscribers on this account, and that is, to me, very exciting. That's an increase from the 18 that we had in December of 5,205%. That's fucking crazy. it's like if you looked at it from a Tour de France mountain point of view, it's like it's almost just straight up. Of which there are 77 paid subscribers, and I thank you. That makes the job a lot easier to just focus on doing the job of the data work and the writing and the preparation and filming than it is writing, filming, preparation, get on the phone to ask for money from friends, writing, filming, run across town, get on the phone and talk to a client, writing, and oh, wait, got to call the other client, writing, okay, got to get some stuff done to get the client to pay in, writing, and that is crazy. And it has really been 4 years of what I do, and just nonstop hustle to try to get all of it to come together, and then you go to sleep. So, one of our viewers, Christine, says, "Thank you for your Easter video. I've just watched it. So joyful and moving." Christine, let me say, it's because of subscribers like you that becomes possible. Now, I'd be filming it anyway. I love to film, and I love capturing those things. But it's really my connectivity to you to make sure that you can see what happens here, and that's a beautiful side of it. And tomorrow, I hope you appreciate the written form that goes with that. So I have a little bit of description in the post there, just so you know what you're looking at. But tomorrow, I have a longer version because, as you saw in the video, there's a lot of a discussion over the PA system. So you have the singers who are singing for you. Christos voskres, okay, what does that mean? What are the song lyrics? What's the chatter between the two hosts and the audience? Because they're not talking to you. They don't even know that you're watching. That was something that you had to have. So, and to our friend who has to leave, that's okay. We're recorded, and we will see you, and thank you for being here. But when I'm filming it, like yesterday, I want to say I was actually very glad that some of you, I have a little bit of a rig that I can put together where it's a lot easier to run around with you and my little filming rig at the same time. And I did not anticipate going to the San Sofia events, but I was at St. Michael's, which is basically right across the street. And so all I had to do was pivot over down a block, pay the 300 hryvnia access fee to the church, and go in and just film and live stream. And I sent some photos to a couple people so that they have some articles that will come out, and some video. And then there was also the video that I shared with you. So what will come tomorrow is a written article about what you saw in the video, meaning what about the commentary? What was the interaction you saw on the field? It's just people running around in circles and having a joyful time. Sort of, a little bit, yeah, a little bit, but not really. It's many, many years of history. In fact, I was overwhelmed at the beauty of the traditional clothing, and the traditional ambience was fucking awesome. I mean, absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful. Especially, I have a lot of love for Ukrainians, as you know, but um, it's not superficial. That's the best part. It's not superficial. So, like, when people go to Ren Fair in America or certain things like that, cosplaying stuff, there's actually a really interesting cosplay culture here. I'll come to you in a second, but in those, it's adopted. Someone just decides to dress up like something they find interesting from somewhere else. No, 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 not what I was saying. No, no, no. And actually, remember, I've been here for a few years, so it's not the first time. But the level of detail that some people put into what they're wearing for the day, and the level of sort of like they used to say, wearing your Sunday best, right? You know that phrase. wearing your Sunday best, but even more so for Easter, you know. That was part of what I saw. But part of why you hear things over the announcement, which will be part of my article tomorrow, the reason why I had to take more of the video and put it in my transcription bin so that it will go. It's about 3 hours worth of video, by the way. So what you saw today is an hour because I literally cut some stuff. Partially because I've got like the phone of the live stream in front of my camera, so I removed some of that because it was redundant and it just had to be. It had to be cut. It was better for you. But in person, it's it's not about the cameras. It's not about anything more than the hugs, the wholesomeness, the gratitude, the deep faith. This is why I said it's very important that the article I share with you tomorrow is a direct confrontation to the Russian lies that Christianity is under attack in Ukraine. No, 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 no. Not even close. Not to say I don't have atheistic friends here or people who are in some other category, but no, no, no. And it was pretty much well on display yesterday in many, many ways. There are also ways in which when you when you read the article tomorrow that goes with the video. And what I'll do for the article tomorrow is I'll take the same video that that I already put up there and I'll embed it at the top so it's kind of joined together. But um, for those who have seen the video that I published from yesterday, you'll see that basically I almost got plowed between the two sides because when I was head down, I was only catching part of the discussion. And for me, even though I'm better at Ukrainian now than when I got here, if I'm in my gear or I'm thinking about you guys, I might not be listening to the announcement the same way. I'm sort of ambiently taking in the announcement. And had I been there any further, I would have been crunched between the two sides who were about to act out the Battle of the Kings. So you'll see some of that description. It goes along with the video in the article that comes out tomorrow. And then I should be able to get the Slovenia being co-opted by Russia article tomorrow. One of our viewers here has a bunch of threes across the comment section, and that's all due to the cat. And that's okay. We like cats around here, and we like that the furry felines and the dogs have their own opinions in what's going on here. So that's essentially what I wanted to kind of jump in here with you guys for a little bit and just have a little bit of a deep appreciative word with you and share that we have the war is not over in Ukraine. Russia, again attacked with ballistic missiles in Dnipro, cab attacks in Kharkiv. Several violations at the big level, and then thousands. I mean, I forget the number I put in my article. I had to go to the AFU official general staff report on how many violations were happening. And then I know that those things are true. Here's another thing about telling the truth in journalism. I don't take state announcements here lightly. I recognize that it is an information war, and Ukrainians have every right to use strategic disinformation or misinformation, to the advantage of, saving people or defeating the enemy. I'll give you a great example. When Denis Nikitin of Russian Volunteer Corps was announced as killed, and then they took a bounty for his death and then turn around and put it right back in the coffers to take out more Russians. Molodets. This is the great way to do that. But as a journalist, two things. I'm not into Russian Nazis even if they fight against the Kremlin, so I just have time for praising Ukrainians. So Garry Kasparov is probably the only Russian that I give a little thumbs up to sometimes. Mostly I have no need for fucking Russians. My friend Andrei Soldatov, actually, let me also say Andrei Soldatov, who's the author of Red Web. I like him. I get along with him pretty well. But you know my article. The good Russian is not coming to save you. That's actually that's still the pinned article on this account. But in the case of, like, I'm using Dennis Nikitin's faked death as a way of showing you that what I mean about strategic disinformation is a thing. Disinformation as part of war is a thing. Um, but they don't, it's not the culture to lie here. It's actually one of the things I have really grown deeply to love and appreciate about Ukraine when it comes to fighting back is it does not reduce itself while being ruthless against the enemy. It does not reduce itself to subhuman behavior. And this is extremely fucking important to understand. A lot of my guys who are my buddies who have been part of the capture forces with Russians and, are at that point of capture with the very Russians who've tried to kill or have even killed their comrades and teammates in the fight. They say to me when we have talked about it, it's not that you don't want to smack them upside the head, but there's been a motivation to not do that at such a level as part of the anger and hatred. That's like, I would knock the shit out of you because I fucking hate you, but first, call your fucking mom and eat your fucking soup. Smachno. I love it. And it's something that's been in forces that are not aligned, like forces that I know that are not in the same teams, different parts of the country in the fight, where I know it's a truism enough that although, yes, there have been, I'm sure there's been violations of these things, humans are humans in war, but the prevailing standard has been really high kept. And many years ago when I went after Dick Cheney, the quote that was always at the top of Cheney Watch was from September 14th, 1775, of the Order of Trenton. That was actually, ironically enough, handed to Benedict Arnold. That says, basically paraphrasing, "Let not a disturbance upon their hair or their head come, or I will hold you responsible." When talking about capturing the Brits, because the British had no quarter. Okay, and this was not a moral play. This was a strategic. This is where George Washington, a slaveholder, where George Washington held a ground that Sun Tzu would have said the appropriate ground was held. So, Chris, does your family live with you in Ukraine? No, if you mean my adopted family, so my real family's all gone. But if in fact, I found out yesterday, one of my very special cousin of mine died, and I'll come to that. I've got more to say about some of this. But in my adopted Ukrainian family, no. Part of it's displaced, um, and part of it's in occupation. But specifically, my mom is not too far from where I'm at, and I saw her day before yesterday. It's now Tuesday, so I saw her Sunday, and I love my mom. My mom loves me right back. And essentially, my best friend, and she lived over there, where I lived with them for 3 years. I'm the orphan from America that was raised from little up to 40. Now I'm this many, uh, and she did all the work. She made me better. She even cleaned off all the dirt from my boots, which is why when I walked in yesterday or Sunday when I walked in, it's like, fresh clay from Sloviansk. Yeah, don't touch. I was really upset. She came in, she goes, "Oh, I cleaned your boots and I put them on the balcony." No! I was like, I had all that patina from Bucha and Izum and Kharkiv and Antonivka and Kherson and Pokrovsk, Liman, and they were spotless. In fact, in my own apartment here, when I walk around my apartment, it's like I was scorning myself. I've become. Oh, I have to tell you. I have to figure out how to tell you because it's part of the story I can't tell you. But I've been turned into a hybrid Ukrainian, and I learned it a few months ago. But anyway, so I'm going through my apartment, and I'm like, man, Mama would be so upset. Like, there's times where, like, my apartment isn't, I have a distinction between dirty and cluttered. Like, dirty is like, like if you have a coffee stain or something, like you have something sticky, that's dirty. Like, yeah. But cluttered is just that I have a lot of stuff and I work on all the time. And like when I get done with filming, I'm tired when I come home. And I put the camera bag and I put the stands bag and I don't like prop them back up and I don't put everything back on everything all the time. But I've always said if you can clean your office and your house in 20 minutes, you're not doing too bad. If it takes you all day or 2 days, you're an asshole. There's something wrong with you. Fix it up. So mine usually is about like when I'm neurotic and like it's not great, then I go through and realize I can actually put it all back together in 25 minutes, under 30 minutes. It's fine. Clean the kitchen, get it all done. But is it the level Mama would have it? Oh my God, no. When I walked into Mom's house the other day, very first thing she did was, of course, zeleny borscht, green borscht is back, so she knows that's my favorite. And oh no, go wash your hands. I'm 56 years old. Звичайно, Mama, no problem. And I love it. She's what I mean by raising me, from like a child level to in a way that I always had that. I mean, I had that anyway a little bit. My grandmother was like that, but not like this. But my grandmother took good care of me growing up. So Mama Ponaduse, Mama's above all, and what Mama's standards are the best. And I've said this before, and I don't mind bragging about her. I said this with my friend yesterday on Sunday when I was hanging out with him about her, that I talk about her with you guys. I don't talk about some things because it's private business, and also, some things are security oriented. But also, for instance, on the video the other day when I posted the video of the Babosi who run the desk in my building, it was an accident. My camera went blurry, and I find it fucking annoying. It's an Osmo, and I put it in my pocket, and I'm doing my thing so that it's really just out of the way. And I just happened, I don't know what I did, but as soon as I walked in to hand over the cake, as someone, one of our, more than one person, but specifically one of our persons here said, can you make a video of you bringing her the little peach turnovers? And I said, sure, no problem. And I opened up the door, and when I did, for whatever reason, a digital camera that should not even go blurry went blurry. And I was a little upset at first. I'm like, no, oh, yeah, from an operational security point of view, that's perfect. We don't need to see her face. You need to just hear her voice. Oh, я люблю тебя. Бажаю здоровья. And you get to hear the reaction there. But same thing, it's okay with me to protect the privacy of the person who works downstairs and just say, the point was to show you that I go to my local store, I get her a little peach turnover, and especially thanks to our supporters and subscribers, there's that little extra money that, for $30 a month, roughly, I guarantee that that's going to keep flowing. She's in her upper 70s, just like Mom. And so when I stop by the store and I get a little cake for her to say I'm thinking about you when she's working, makes her happy. What did she do in return? On Sunday before the rally, if you didn't hear this yesterday, was I don't drink. I'm very thankful. My dad, although a saint in 1,000 ways, and my grandfather before him, had alcoholism problems. So I don't know why that's not true with me. I'm just very thankful and lucky that I don't. Um, but I'm about to go to a rally on Sunday for a Defender rally, and I don't do that. I've only had one time I've had a drink anytime during the day here, and that was on October 10th when we had the massive airstrike here on October 10th, and I happened to be next to a place called Strong Bar where the windows had all been blown out. And as I'm covering anything, I was live on Twitter, and we had a lot of our like Sparkles and some of our our April Sparkles, if you know from Twitter, was on with me. And I walked in, and I'm like, "Are you guys okay?" And they're like, "Yeah." And "Can I come down and make sure everything's see how it looks?" "Yeah, sure, no problem." And I just happened to turn and said, "Oh yeah, I have monkey shoulder," which is a really good Scotch. Yeah, yeah, I want some. Sure. I don't know why I said sure. I said, okay. So at 12, like, no, that was 10:30 in the morning. Like 10:30 in the morning, I had a shot of scotch as I was covering a very massive attack, an important attack on Kyiv. And I don't think that that's a good way to do things. Now, it didn't affect my performance for the day. I just got my shit done. But that's very unusual for me. And as I mentioned to you guys the other night on Saturday, yeah, Saturday, I was hanging out with a lot of soldiers, and I was the boring stiff. I don't make edgy jokes. I'm mostly nodding, and I'm having my onion rings because onion rings are good for depression. I didn't know that, but apparently they are. And and I'm having a cold, two cold Sprites back to back. No, sorry, one cold Coke. And I don't like the fact that this restaurant serves me the tiniest little fucking Coke that's about yay fucking big. For 3 times the price, and you can buy the little bit bigger one that's about yay big. And also, they're all smaller here in Ukraine anyway. And no, there was Jameson here, and there's Jameson and beer there, and there's beer there, and there's beer there, and like, and I'm the only one not doing any of that. So I'm fucking boring on that level, especially as it goes on and on and on and on, and people are talking about blowing up shit and injuries, and if you're around soldiers here in war, oh my god, it's fucking crazy, and I love them to death, every one of them there, even though they say shit that I find really fucking edgy. Only 2 Ukrainians in the room. The rest were not Ukrainian there, and the 2 Ukrainians were kind of like just overwhelmed and kind of laughing at the crazy Americans, Brits, and others that were all there to do the good deed to help defeat the Russians. So it's kind of funny. And again, I'm this stiff. It's like I have to get back to left bank now because Mama says time to go to sleep. Anyway, and I have a rally tomorrow, and I live on left bank, which means I have to get the metro back, and I have to be the responsible one. And they're like, I just got to crawl across the street to get into my place. So that's how that is. And yet, the lady at the front door yesterday, Sunday, and then again yesterday, was like, "Here, have a shot," along with pashka, and there was like kotleti, kartoplia, no, kotleti chleb, so little meat cutlets and bread, and what else? On Sunday, I'm going to deal with Sunday because I'll talk about what happened yesterday. And I know some of you like hearing these, so that's why I'm going into this. There's no script. I've got a lot of feedback from you guys that you like to hear about this very organic Ukrainian life I get. Um, and so I'm running late, or not really. There's no late going to a 2-hour rally, but for me, I like to be at the beginning of the rally, and pretty close to the beginning of the rally at 1 o'clock. And it's about a 40-minute transportation time for me to get over there. So I have 25 minutes to get there. And yet, no. And she's like, no, come here. You have to, come here. So it's like there's pickles, and there's some tomatoes, and some cutlets, and little beef cutlets, and bread, and a little bit of cake, and and then you got to get a shot of. I wish I could tell you what it was that she had there, but it was almost like a light whiskey, or a little bit of a cognac or something. And um, and I'm like, okay, so I have one, and then as I'm finishing it, she pours a second one. I'm like, my brain's going, no, like literally, I'm not going to be walking amongst my defender families with even more than one shot. One's fine. I'll be fine. I got enough oomph in my stature to be able to handle that. I'm not a lightweight, but at the same time, I don't like swabble head, like I don't like swimmy headed. That's why I don't like alcohol. But the love that she was doing that for was because this Texas guy never misses a fucking opportunity to put that peach turnover in her office. As I come around, and she knows that there are times where she can tell I'm very fucking stressed about the war. She knows I'm a serious guy. I have sat down and pulled up my phone to show my background in terrorism on television and the stuff that I do and why I'm here. And she'll ask me questions, and she speaks very rapid fire, which makes it, difficult for me to always catch everything she's saying. I have to context clue a little faster. But she was saying in her way, thank you for all the love you show every day that I work here, because it's a lot of other people are really kind here, and they stop and they look out. But this particular one, if I keep talking about alcohol, you're going to head to get the rye. I'm not done because I have one more. So yesterday, which is Monday, it's Monday, yes, and I'm on my way out, and she's like, "Come here," and I like how she's very demanding. "Come here, sit down." And I was like, "No, I have to get to." It actually, this sounded even less like an important issue when I said, not я піду це на акцію, це, захисники в полоні. I'm going to the action for the captive defenders. That's Sunday. What was I saying yesterday? No, я їду це на кафе, каву. Like, I'm going to the cafe for coffee. That is not nearly as important as sitting your ass down, young man, and having holodets. Now, I'm going to tell you what holodets is in a minute, but she starts preparing me a plate, and there's another lady who's her friend who keeps her company in there. And they sit down. Now, if you don't know what holodets is, if anyone in this space who's watching with us knows what holodets is, go ahead and type it in the space. It's it's a meat jelly, and it's a very unusual dish for a kid from Texas. We have no such things. I'm not the pickiest eater I've ever known, but I'm kind of picky. I'm a little picky. There's a lot of things I don't eat, and I eat a lot of stuff that other people would never touch, especially like super spicy stuff. But in the case of in the case of holodets, it's a very interesting dish. It's not my style at all, at all. Um, and the first version of this that I had a couple years ago, it's like literally you take a gelatin and you take meat and you put it all in there together and it's cold and you throw it on a plate and you eat it and it's like uh, I have Ukrainian friends, so I'm gonna shut the fuck up before I embarrass myself with them. They go, "How could you say this about my food?" But it's not my style, But I always push myself because what I find interesting is that I felt that way about when I had buckwheat for the first time. I'm used to having rice and certain times, but not this. And now I don't even think about it. Like buckwheat with some bread and some food on the side. Like I don't even think about it. But at first I was like, I'm getting it, and I'm downing it. There's something else beside it. I like something else and something else, but I'm okay. And yesterday, uh, again, well, let me go to the first version. So, Mama, over a year ago, and it's mostly around holiday time, Christmas, when this is served. Mama sits it down and says, oh, well, he likes holodets, and she makes me a whole nother plate, even though I had just survived the first plate. So there's a little bit of misunderstanding, and it's sort of comedic, when someone says, "Do you like?" and you're like, "Yeah," and I say, "Well, here, let's double it up." Um, and so that's what it was last time over a year ago with Mama, and I have a side of me that's very Ukrainian nationalist, so like you can't put too much salo on the plate and upset me. I'm perfectly good with salo. I will hit my max, meaning like there's a point where like any food, except maybe chocolate. Well, even with chocolate, I think there's a point where I'll be like, yeah, I'm good for right now. So what happens yesterday is I'm getting ready to go to the cafe. It's early, and for my time at the cafe, I just like to have my hot dog and my coffee. And those, if you don't know what hot dogs are like here, basically you have in mine I like sausage style, so it's spicy. Not necessarily hot spicy, but just the flavor of it. And they're made in these sleeves that are called French sleeves, not French bread, but they're like it's a sleeve of bread, and you basically just slip the hot dog inside with your sauces and stuff. So um, it's I've enjoyed them since I've gotten here. And then if I was in America and someone said, "Do you want a hot dog with your coffee?" meaning like a traditional, like from American point of view, like a hot dog bun with a coffee. And I go, why? What the fuck would I want that for? It would make no sense to me. But if you said a kolache with coffee, now that we're going for. So you got to think of it like that. So that's how I planned to start my day yesterday. When all of a sudden, no, that's not what's going to happen. It's a plateful, like literally a plateful, holodets, and then some salad that's a mixture of like cabbage and some other sauces that she has it in there. What else was on the plate? Some more pickles, more. I have to keep translating Ukrainian, and it's like I don't say tomato in my head. I said pomodoro. I don't say some of these things I say in Ukrainian in my head first, but like some tomatoes. What else? And then two types of cake. One is the Easter cake, and then another one was a type of cake she had. And part of what she was doing, she just had this food that was left over from Easter. So the American kids here, come and eat. And she's rapid firing, asking questions to me while I'm trying to get ready to go. And I really wanted to go get my coffee. I hadn't had my coffee yet. And I love her so much for this. This is actually the reason why I don't mind telling you all this, that I really appreciate sharing this with you, is that I really appreciate this lady. I did not get to see my grandmother past the year 2000. She was 73. She raised me. She was the saint of everything in my life. And when I came here to Ukraine, there was a lady I looked after in my last neighborhood before I left Houston in 2017 after Hurricane Harvey, that for several years, Melba was her name. She was in her 90s, and I lived about a block away. And my job was to run down from time to time and chase dogs out of the property, and unfortunately pick up cats that had been killed. Like I was the kind of, she had no family, really, and so I kind of adopted her, and she adopted me right back, back when I was in Houston. And then when I got tired of one too many thousand of hurricanes in Houston and left Houston for 3 years, another friend of mine took over looking after Melba, and then I still to this day have recordings of Melba calling up and, Chris, this is Melba. Did you see Ted Cruz on TV? He's such a jackass. I still have those recordings. So I have that now. It's just in Ukrainian. Я люблю тебе. I love you. And that's the lady downstairs. And then the other lady is a little closer to my age. So I don't walk in and hand her a bunch of cakes. I give her a high five. What's up? Kind of shoot the shit. But the elders, I think, I think that, saturating elders with love and appreciation is a big part of the good thing in life. And back to the question, because this is what brought it up, is do I get to see Mama? Um, Talking with Mama is important because Mama's displaced from Kherson. If the world were perfect, Mama would be back in her house in Kherson living her life. And we lost her husband in 2023, my best friend's dad, Ed Sr. And and I remember when they came to Kyiv after occupation. I didn't know her. She didn't know me. She had already been through the shit of the occupation, and now the kid from Texas that spoke almost no English, or no English, no Ukrainian at the time, and she speaks no English. The kid from Texas speaks better Ukrainian, so I was able to bitch about some things with Witkoff and Trump and Viktor Orban, and we have a chat. We actually literally have a back and forth chat, and my friend in between her son, he's our translator for things that didn't get translated very quickly between us. And actually, there's a lot less translating when she's sitting there with us, and we were eating together. And same thing, Mama piles up the plate with awesome pork steak, awesome, the best fucking mashed potatoes in the world, the best zeleny borscht on the planet. Mama makes the best everything. Najkraszcze, najkraszcze, you know. And I really would kill 1,000 Russians for my mom, because she's the best. And my best friend also, Edward. And my other best friend, whose apartment we lived in, that they actually live in because he's displaced, my buddy Andrei. I'm hoping one day you can see my friend Andrei will join us. He's actually one of my subscribers and buddies here, and I want to have a great conversation with him because he's a language master, and he does translations, and he also was a teacher for America's Defense Language Institute. So he's a very valuable member of our society as well. And I'll leave it to him for what he wants to share when we have our conversation. I think it'll be a great conversation about language. But we were like three adults, Mama, Edward, and I, three adults living on top of children's rooms. And when I left, gave her a big old hug and said, I'm right around the corner. Just let me know. And the first thing I was told was, don't wait so long, come over. You're only right around the corner, which is true. Yeah. So that's that part of the story. And why does some of that matter also to the topic I was starting with, which is that Easter, the article I put out tomorrow, and how the insult to Ukraine, that Ukraine is not a Christian country, or even more stupid is that it's hostile to Christianity. Fucking bullshit. Absolute fucking bullshit. Complete moronic level bullshit. Okay? And the worst part is the people who say it, the kind of Tucker Carlson types. First off, they're fake Christians anyway, but The type of Christians that those folks are, I know those. I was married to a perfect evangelical, okay? A perfect one, all right? And I know that value system really well. I'm very, said before, I'm very glad I didn't grow up in a religious household. We had we were free to read educational books, and if we want to read something in the Bible, that's fine. But my mom wasn't that way. My dad wasn't that way. My dad loved Peace in the Valley from Elvis Presley, but more importantly, I think he just kind of liked life and working for the family. But no one in our family was religious. I had an uncle on my mom's side that was, a little hyper religious with his wife, but the rest of them weren't. And the same thing on my dad's side. I don't remember any of them being hyper religious. Not at all. And I feel lucky for that because then I don't have to shake that off or adjust it. I can just be a person who does my own mental travels. But um, let's see. Try to read some of these comments that you have down here. Yeah, best borscht was my grandma, but that's okay. Best borscht is, yeah, grandma, of course, babusi. That's the whole point. Mama's 76, so she knows she's a grandma. Um, but I didn't have those things, and yet I am very defensive of properly religious people, meaning that not the religiosity, but deeply spiritual people who have a deep faith. I'm protective of them, meaning I don't have to insult what they view as the universe, algorithms to be. That's not my job. My job is to just be myself and live my life, and then if those philosophies and or lies from religions become abusive, I'll confront them. And I don't have to really deal with that around here. It's wholesome. I'm not saying it's perfect because I don't, I'm not going to bullshit about any society. One thing I love about Ukraine is it's a society. You have a range of different people, a range of different views, a range of different, you know, personalities from, the corruption you hear that's on one end, someone being an asshole or someone doing things wrong or avoiding service or some shit to people who are so not like that and true patriots. I have known the best patriots in my entire life here. I mean, people who just define the word patriotic. And some of my friends will tell you all I have to do to go see a Ukrainian patriot is look in the mirror. I've literally been told that multiple times, including Mama. My own mom said that about me. She said, "You're a great Ukrainian patriot to me." I'm gonna just tell her she said it. I don't know. I'll leave that between. I'll leave history to judge that. But here, the reason why I'm mentioning the food is that when I went to occupied territory, recently released occupied territory in Izum, we went there September 26th, 2022, barely 2 weeks after, the end of the Russian control. And we pulled out food to feed people. There was already a team there that had some food being made, and like, here, come down and say, no, 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 we came here for you. No, no, no. Here, chai. Here, khleeb. Okay. You're sitting there eating, with each other. And I've asked Ukrainian friends, and maybe I'll have someone who's a really good expert in this topic say, is a lot of this to do with the Holodomor, the Great Starvation? Is there something that's written into the breadbasket of the world that says one must eat? There is a phrase here, let there not be a crumb that's wasted. I'm a little bit like that. When they put that down, I'm like, I'm full. No, there's more. Okay. So, maybe some of it's that, but I know that a part of it's baked in from a religious point of view, a spiritual point of view. Let me use that phrase a little bit better. And that's why I wanted to mention it, was that I don't have a reason I have to go give a small peach turnover to the lady at the door. I could just wave at her, pay my concierge fee, which is like 100 hryvnia a month, like 250 or something. It adds up. I don't know if that's just additional pay for them or whatever, but all those basics I could just do like everyone else does, but it doesn't feel right. It feels like I want them to know that while I go about my days, I stop and I think about how their outcome is. And fake religious people can kiss my ass. People who use religion as a weapon, whether it's Christian or Buddhist, I'm a trained Buddhist, but there are people in the Buddhist community who are fuckwits. and manipulative people. And we had a great conversation last night with Stephen Hassan, and I asked him about that. Remember, we were talking about cults, and I said, what about? And there's some different areas of a lot of these things. I know a lot more about than we brought into the conversation. I think we had a great conversation. I hope you go back and watch that. Um, and and I really despise that kind of manipulation. But here, it's not what happens. And I told you about some of these things in the past when I said, like on Easter, when I said that there are ways in which I have seen it in practice in the worst of moments, things I can't imagine to have seen. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, will you be in Ukraine and have tanks and things around you? Well, the fuck would I have tanks around me in Ukraine? Why would I be in Ukraine? I watched about Ukraine, I studied about Ukraine, but I didn't imagine I would be here. I didn't imagine I would be speaking Ukrainian or learning Ukrainian music or language or history. Maybe history, because I study history, but all the things that are happening here were not on my grid. But more importantly is the nuances, the little bitty things that have happened that while I've been here for 4 years have rewritten my compass and built a strong loyalty I have to the people in front of me that will last until the last of my breath and maybe a hair beyond. So tomorrow I will put, I hope by then, the transcript from the entire 3+ hours of Saint Sophia events will be in my hands, which means I can pour over the. It's all in Ukrainian, so it'll take me a big chunk in the morning to pour through and finish the commentary. But I do have an article that'll come out tomorrow. 2000 Easter 2026 Sacred Traditions. In the 5th year of the full-scale invasion, Ukrainians gather at St. Sophia Cathedral in Kyiv to celebrate the resurrection. The faith is real, the traditions are alive, the people are vibrant in the face of death. Isn't that the whole fucking point? And that's tomorrow's article. And then again, a reminder for today's article, we have hold on. Okay. Two men, two wars, one book. The Lie Machine. That's Putin and Trump losing their wars. And the Lie Machine next to the anchor for CNN. And then, of course, I got the video out for the St. Sophia events. And thank you for tuning in tonight. And a reminder that I thank you deeply that we are almost at 1,000 followers on this account. Do everything. Tell your friends. I mean, some friends did that this last couple of weeks, and that's why the numbers are getting good. 955. Let's hit 1,000 by next week. By this time next week, 45 more subscribers, and we will hit 1,000, and then we got to go to 10,000. Right? That's the next mark. We could say 2,000, but let's get to 10,000. Let's recognize that Andrew Tate is on this platform with 1 million fucking subscribers. So is Michael Flynn. He doesn't have 1 million subscribers, but I used to say this about spaces. When my allies have spaces filled with about 20, 30 people, or I couldn't get more than 16, and I have 20,000 followers on there, what pissed me off is that our adversaries had 400 people in there passing around lies. So we have to do better. We have to do better. And I'm willing to do my part to do the work of the writing, the research, and the publishing, and I'm willing to do the work to get our allies and our friends to come together for interviews and share our organic network. And I'm asking you to do your part to bring in more people to pay attention to what this is, that this is different than your traditional news outlet where there is no interactivity. This is not fucking CNN. This is not MSNBC, kiss your ass Democratic Party. This is not, fuck Fox News. But anyway, this is not Fox News. This is organic, straightforward, independent journalism. It is something we do together. I do not do this alone. This is not a me project. This is a we project. And we are at 955 on this account, of which 77 are paid subscribers. And I really appreciate those who have done so. And I've always told you, all articles have been and will remain, just like I did on Patreon, which is, I'm about to phase it out. Someone actually signed up the other day at Patreon. I'm like, why? I'm not even really using it over there. And I don't feel very excited about a thing called Patreon. It sounds like it's just raw money. Like, post a thing at Patreon. I mean, it just means like, hey, support me. Like, buy me a coffee. Okay, great. I like that. That's fine. But here it feels like we're doing something. Like, I kind of appreciate Substack. So if we can get rid of Andrew Tate, I like that even better. He participated in crimes, and I don't like that shit. I don't like that shit, like, a lot. And same thing with Tim Pool or Michael Flynn being on here. We can't stop them from being here easily, but we can be better than that. We can actually go out and I see some of the lists on that, some of the names on that list. Actually, let me go to that list real quick. I don't really have a deadline for tonight. I'm just gonna, when I get done talking to you guys, I'm gonna sign off. But Aaron Parnas is number one. Andrew Tate is number two. Fuckwit. Who else is in here that shouldn't even be up here? A lot of the rest of these are not bad. I might not agree with everybody. There's a lot of people in this I kind of don't agree with, or I'm not really all into them. But at least they're not the straight up adversary for the good. Hold on, who else was in here I saw earlier today that was like, really? Are you serious? Like, I'm not a big fan of the Young Turks. They lost me a long time ago. Michael Flynn is number 52 in Rising News. I was number 49 yesterday. Now I'm at 88. And thanks to you. Okay, I'm not there because I'm doing something, except for the news part. I'm there because you're doing something there that gets us there. So just so you know how I see about it. But who else was in there that I just thought should not be in there? Oh, Frank Figluzzi is at number 79. There I am at number 88. Who else did I see? Oh, Caitlin Johnstone. Fucking disinformation bitch that she is from Australia. What the fuck? That isn't news. I don't like that. I wish there was like an algorithm that says, nah, news. Like, Andrew Tate is not news. He's a fucking piece of shit rapist apologist, Like, I don't give a fuck what he is. Fuck him, man. He should be in fucking jail. He should be in fucking jail. That's who Andrew Tate is, Man, Andrew Tate, I'm gonna tell you flat out, man, you wouldn't last 5 fucking seconds with me in a ring. So your macho shit can fuck off, man. I hate people like that. I just absolutely just boils my blood to see his name on the list. He should be in the top rising douchebag category, not in the news. And then top bestseller list. Who was the number one? One of these was also someone that shouldn't be in there. I saw it the other day. Who else was in there that's really total shitbag that shouldn't be on this platform? Should be on any platform. Yeah, there was someone else was in there that was like, how the hell did you get in that list? Oh, Andy No. Yeah. Fuck Andy No. Fuck Andy No. Like, yeah, whatever. Michael Flynn. Um, there was someone else in here. I just not seeing his name in this. Maybe they drop. And it's interesting how we drop on and off this list. By the way, some of these like rising news just means we had a burst of following that percentage wise to our existing count means we went up for a little bit, and then it can come and go. I saw Frank, for instance, Frank Figluzzi rose to like number 9 or 12. And I think that's great, But like, Jim Costa is an actual news guy. He should be in, like, all these categories. In international, Phillips O'Brien is top in rising, and that's great. He's certainly qualified. I actually watched him the other day. Wasn't really sure what I thought about him when I saw him all on Twitter, but having watched him with Timothy Snyder, our awesome Timothy Snyder professor, great segment, very informative. I have no qualms with that. There's a few others in here that I'm seeing a pretty good list. Okay, good. Not as many douchebags as I'd seen before. But there's some that like, dude, that's not even a news guy, Get the fuck out of the idea that that's news. Oh, which reminds me, one of the articles that's coming, I'll give you a little heads up with, is Patrick Lancaster. Another absolute pile of fucking turd. Patrick Lancaster put out a video. I'm always monitoring on Telegram the enemy. I keep up with the enemy pretty well. And stay calm, Chris. They're not worth it. No, I need my hatred right here. See, I wear my shirt. Russian military ship. Go fuck yourself. I wear my attitude boldly and straightforward to the point. No pretense on this one. Straightforward. But anyway, no. Patrick Lancaster put out a video on YouTube today saying he's quitting YouTube, and no, he wasn't. He's just playing games. It's a manipulation. It's the I'm going away. No, I'm not. I'm going away. No, I'm not. But I have been working on some documents about him and what's the little psychopath, Graham Phillips. I have been watching these guys for a long time, and I pay attention to them. Oh, someone mentioned Wajahad Ali. I think there's some guys in these lists that are really great. But Patrick Lancaster put out that video, and so I had to pull one of my old files on him from 2023 when I was writing this, and then I did a couple of updates about it. And what I did on the new one, which I don't think he's going to like, which I've told you guys how I like to use AI, is one of the things I do is I take Claude AI and I write. I already built my prompt in ChatGPT back in September and October, but so now I just have the prompt and it's all been rebuilt in Cloud. But I can take their entire Telegram accounts. I export Telegram. I go to Telegram and I say export chat from beginning to current. And you get HTML pages. Sometimes you get maybe one or two pages, or you wind up with 20 and 30 of them because it does it. I don't know what the length of period of time before it creates the next HTML page, but it exports a bunch of HTML pages of all the stuff in Telegram, all the posts. You could also say export, like I do this, not related to this method I'm going to tell you, but I also export all Telegram accounts from certain accounts with everything, all videos, stickers, graphics, files, you name it. So I have complete archives of probably well over 100 different active telegrams on a constant basis, including the friendly sides of our different units, the 47th Magura or Wild Hornets. I have all the stuff they've ever published. I have every drone video you've ever seen released on Telegram. I have on one of these mini hard drives. And but when you take the HTML or the JSON file of messages out, you can digitize them and put them into AI programs like Claude. Claude I found has been the best to do this. And then I have a series of prompts that basically can show the type of post and the type of information that's contained in there that I've been reading the entire time, so I kind of know what I'm looking for. But it helps do it at a much faster rate than a human would do. And it actually found some things I hadn't really paid attention to because there's a lot of times I'm not watching everything they're saying. And I didn't know there had been some clashes between a few of these people when I started comparing their different accounts and then fusing them. And then you have to, like, when you get to a certain point, you stop and you get your basic report and then you write from the reports. So I took an initial dossier I had already started on him in regular document form, and then I digitized the transcript from the video of him announcing that he was leaving YouTube when he's not, plus a couple of other videos I had that are, it's a lot of ramble he did that helps for my article, some things he said, and then I take those clips, put them all together, and then I went and said, you know what, I need to digitize his entire Telegram again. And you also have to do the rule when you're working with AI. Remember, I said if you don't know what you're doing with it, you're going to get kind of garbage in, garbage out. Like your lack of understanding how to use it, you're going to get a lot of problems in the final report. So you kind of take something like if you're a poetry expert, or I don't know what your various expertise are of our friends here in the room. So whatever your different expertise is, and stick to your lane, and then try to use one of those to process something you work on, and you will see the differences between what you know to be true and its errors. And that's what's important, because a person who does not know those errors will not spot the errors, and gets out there. I'm not an economics major. I am not an oil market major. So, uh, Errol is asking, who am I talking about? I'm talking about Patrick Lancaster in this case, who's a former Navy cryptologist who was based in Greece before he came to Ukraine in 2014 and has been engaged in disinformation on behalf of Russia the entire time. And he got on my radar again with a post saying, "I'm quitting YouTube." And so he becomes one of the next articles where I have processed how he, you know, the dossier I already created, and then now I haven't digitized his Telegram post yet, but I will do that tomorrow sometime, and then I'll pick through it and figure out what the logical order is of what's in there, and then essentially pick apart what I'd like to see a plan to eliminate his Patreon, his Buy Me a Coffee, or anything else that's vulnerable. Same thing with Andrew Tate. And here's one thing I love about AI. They don't want to help me in this. They're like, this is targeting. Duh. Retired counterterrorism guy. Like, I'm all about targeting. Boom. Big time about targeting. So I'm glad that they don't do it. I don't need them to do that part. I won't do that part. But we need to have people understand what his effect is, because when you go on Twitter and you run into these narratives, they don't invent themselves. They don't. They don't just magically appear out of the assholes on Twitter. They're cultivated. They've been cultivated for a long time, and he's basically a disinformation laundromat, just like Caitlin Johnstone. And when you know their flavors, when you know who John Mark Dougan is, and when you know who Graham Phillips is, and you know their distinctions, then you can do a little bit better about going out and reporting on Substack or Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. Report their accounts and defund them, because he's hauling in thousands of dollars a month to bullshit you and to help the enabling of killing of Ukrainians. So he can go fuck himself. So he's one of the projects, and I'm not sure when I'll have that done. And actually, a couple of these I've actually worked on quite a bit in the past few weeks, and then really not published anything yet, because I'd rather publish something that's more useful at the moment. But I have an ongoing harvesting bin of what they do, and I tend to want to get these things out to make sure that my friends, like you just asked me, who's this person you're talking about? Why do I care about Caitlin Johnstone, the Australian who lies about things? Well, because they affect people around you. Somewhere in your orbit is someone who has repeated to you the commentary that's come out of these people. Someone in your orbit, I promise you, has repeated back to you something from John Mearsheimer or Larry Johnson or Patrick Lancaster or who's another one that's kind of well known in the right wing circle, or the Russian disinformation circle. There's a few different people. And there's someone in your orbit that repeats it back to you as if it's fact all the time, and you may not even know it. So the more you know the adversary, the better you can do. Anyway, do people end up on those due to algorithm primarily? Rewrite that to me a different way. What do you mean on those? Do you mean on Telegram? Just rephrase that question I just saw in the space, and I'll be glad to answer it for you. And otherwise, and I'll stay here to answer that. But otherwise, I'm going to go take a rest so that I can work on the Easter article tomorrow for the video that I hope you can enjoy today, because it's already up. There's actually two. There's two videos up on the platform. One is the one I filmed with my actual camera that I was filming with. And then the other one is the live cast that I ran on here, which is very vertical. And let's see, do many people end up on those radical sites due to algorithms primarily? I don't think so. No, I think that the algorithms have their role in it. Hold on, let's see. So we have real quick about the Easter broadcast. There are two. One is called Live Easter Celebration from Kyiv. And then that's the one that just literally I pulled out my phone and I brought you guys with me. And then the other one that's an hour or something is Easter 26 Sacred Traditions. Essentially, roughly the same event, but from two different angles, including the one that I released today, Easter 2022 Sacred Traditions, is what I was already filming when I finally also pulled out my phone and kind of indulged you with this real time, and it has some stuff that was on afterwards. So those two things are on. But to answer your question on, do algorithms primarily get to radical sites? I will answer it this way. On YouTube, there's what's basically known as the extremist pipeline, which works a little bit like Stefan Mallieu says something right wingish on YouTube, or Jordan Peterson, and then from there winds up you see someone else, and then someone else, and the next thing you know, you're into Nick Fuentes. Okay. Now, that's not true for you guys. It's not true for everybody. But for some, that's what it is. Like, little by little, it basically creates this effect where the algorithm starts thinking that you want more and more and more edgelordy shit. And the more you watch it out of a rabbit hole effect, like, and this really happened very interesting enough during the QAnon phase of COVID, where essentially the algorithm got you trapped. I had a different version of it happen to me about a year and a half ago, where I watched one interrogation video because I study interrogation, um, composite read technique, and the Hunt Sharp techniques, and and I watched it again when I saw that it was feeding them to me at a rate that, as fast as I could consume all these shows that were like an hour long of sheriffs or police departments busting some absolutely lunatic murderer who had done some really freaky shit. It kept doing it, and after 2 days, I basically purged the algorithm by just wiping the history of it. And it's like I used to tell people who accidentally ran into an ISIS video: go watch fuzzy bunnies, go watch kittens, go do everything that's like happy and cute, and like get completely away from, go to the some other extreme that's all fuzzy bunny stuff, the hope and raisin lights, and rebuild the algorithm, make it serve you, take over the algorithm. But for people who are just following the algorithm, yes, it's very much that it happens. And there are ways in which that extremist pipeline is a little bit algorithmic. I think ultimately my experience says it's not, that the primary effect of getting into extremism is the environment of your social circle. So, who you're surrounded with all your life, if you're surrounded, if you have, religious upbringing, extremist, um, things near you in some capacity growing up, or in your orbit, in your community. If you live in a very right wing town, a right wing family, or whatever it is, whatever your flavor is, you're more likely to be susceptible because of those things than you are because an algorithm makes you do something or not do something. However, the algorithms, and if I get my book Redline, sorry to my buddy Andrei Soldatov, who wrote a great book called Red Web. But I have a book I started in 2018. I actually started rebuilding, called Redline, and one of the chapters in there is called the digital cocoon, and it's about how algorithms that are designed to give you what you want keep you locked in a digital chrysalis, where you, almost like a digital solipsism, where the world on the outside of it ceases to exist, where all you're getting is, like, if you're a hyper woke lefty who really hates Trump, and you're watching I don't know, like I don't know what that would be for you, like Rachel Maddow or something all the time. Then you get all that, and the only news you hear is that. You don't hear rival perspectives that are, maybe you get a direct Fox News, something that's really obviously not you. But mostly it's designed also as part of your hate Donald Trump thing, where that's all you get. You don't get something kind of neutral. You don't get, like, let's say, like, completely apolitical but very important news that's designed to help inform you. One of our viewers says punk rock breaks algorithms. I like that. Yeah, I like that. I think that's great. My way of breaking it is to get into Django Reinhardt. So when I have something that's taking over too much, like the here's one that happened also, and I used Django Reinhardt to destroy them. Was the what do they call themselves? First Amendment auditors. You know, the kind that randomly have a conflict with a police officer. Or they go into some public building. I'm allowed to with the Constitution. I can do this, and they're pissing people off. It starts thinking that's all I want. And I'm just curious how one person handled it. And then all of a sudden, I can't get it out of my algorithm bin on YouTube. So, one of the easiest ways I would do that is just watch a bunch of Django Reinhardt instructional, how to play gypsy jazz and, how to do the rest stroke. And I would just search it and search it and search it. And, you know, um, transcriptions for, minor mood or certain songs, and then I would just go to another and another and another, and then eventually that's what it thinks I want, because the system actually is just trying to do that part. That's really mostly what it is. There are exceptions to that, like in TikTok. Now TikTok is owned by Magaland, and Magaland is doing exact opposite. It is literally manipulated in a way that YouTube is not. YouTube is literally designed to give you what it thinks you think you want. And the way you confront it is, as one person says, watch some punk. Uh, watch something different. If you didn't catch my mention of it yesterday, also go back in my timeline, and there's an article I put out yesterday called "We Are Brothers: How Russia Uses Kinship as a Weapon." Just to remind you, if you haven't seen that, because those of you who like to study on what's going on. And of course, I did put out my Shapeshifters Grand Tour about J.D. Vance yesterday. Um, uh, J.D. Vance. I mean, the typhoid Mary of politics. Anyway, so that was out yesterday. The interview yesterday with Steve Hassan's also on the timeline, but those are some of the latest things. And again, just a reminder, the CNN article today, the live machine next to the anchor, and then the two men, the two wars, and one book is out. So we will see you tomorrow. Maybe I'll pop on to see what's going on, and who knows what happens. It is such a chaotic, crazy world right now that literally every day is like a festival of lunacy, and we have to do our best part to keep our shit together, right? So take care of yourselves. Slava Ukraini, Heroям Slava, і пиздець Російській Федерації.